The silence in the room wasn't peaceful. It was terrified. You could hear a pin drop on the carpet of the Obsidian Club, New York's most exclusive restaurant, the moment Preston Garrick walked through the door. He was a man worth billions, but to his employees, he was a nightmare wrapped in a three-piece Italian suit. He had fired a chef for a lukewarm soup and bankrupted a valet for scratching his sedan. Everyone looked at the floor when he passed. Everyone, except for the new waitress who had nothing left to lose. What happens when an unstoppable tyrant meets an immovable object? You're about to find out. The atmosphere inside the Obsidian Club was always tense, but on Tuesday evenings it became suffocating. Tuesday was the night Preston Garrick dined. Preston was not merely a CEO, he was an institution in New York City. At 36, he controlled Garrick Enterprises, a conglomerate that had swallowed up shipping lines, tech startups, and real estate firms with the ruthless efficiency of a shark in a koi pond. He was handsome in a sharp, jagged way. Dark hair, eyes the color of cold steel, and a jawline that looked like it could cut glass. But his looks were irrelevant to his staff. To them, he was a walking termination notice. "He's 5 minutes out," Henri, the floor manager, hissed into his headset. Henri was a man in his 50s who had survived 3 wars, yet he was currently sweating through his starch-collared shirt. "Check the table settings again. If I see a single water spot on the silverware, you're all gone." Maya Linley stood near the service station, adjusting her apron. It was her 3rd shift. She was 24, with tired eyes and hands that were rougher than the fine silk napkins she was folding. She wasn't supposed to be a waitress. 6 months ago, she had been a top-tier paralegal student at Columbia, weeks away from an internship that would have changed her life. Then, her father's medical diagnosis came down like a hammer. The tuition money became medical bills. The internship became a double shift at a diner, and now a trial run at the Obsidian. "You," Henri pointed a shaking finger at Maya, "you stay in the back. You run food to the station, but do not, I repeat, do not approach table 1. Sarah will handle the water. Thomas handles the wine. I will handle the order." "Understood," Maya said, her voice calm. She watched as the veteran servers lined up like soldiers awaiting inspection. The heavy mahogany doors swung open. The air in the restaurant seemed to vanish. Preston Garrick entered, flanked by 2 assistants who were typing furiously on tablets, trying to keep pace with his long strides. He didn't look at the hostess who greeted him. He didn't look at the decor. He walked straight to table 1, the corner booth with the view of the skyline, and sat down. He didn't speak. He simply held out his hand. Henri immediately placed the wine list in it. "The 09 Pinot," Preston said, tossing the leather-bound book onto the table without opening it. "And tell the chef if the ribeye is even a degree over medium rare, he can eat it himself in the unemployment line." "Yes, Mr. Garrick. Immediately, Mr. Garrick," Henri bowed, retreating backward as if turning his back would result in a knife wound. Maya watched from the shadows of the kitchen pass. She had seen difficult men before. Her father had been a union rep. She grew up watching men scream at each other over contracts. But Preston was different. He didn't scream. He possessed a quiet, venomous arrogance that was far more terrifying. He didn't think he was better than them. He knew he was, and he treated them not as humans, but as malfunctioning appliances. "Order up," the chef barked, sliding a plate onto the pass. The ribeye sizzled, perfect and aromatic. "Get it out there, now." Thomas, the waiter assigned to the wine, was trembling. He had just poured the glass. As he turned to grab the steak knife from the service tray, his elbow bumped the edge of the table. A single drop of red wine splashed onto the pristine white tablecloth. It was the size of a dime. The room froze. Preston stopped scrolling on his phone. He looked at the red spot. Then he looked at Thomas. "Leave," Preston said. His voice was low, devoid of emotion. "Mr. Garrick, I am so sorry. I will change the cloth immediately." Thomas stammered, his face draining of colour. "I said leave," Preston repeated, picking up his napkin and dropping it over the stain. "You're clumsy. Clumsy people cost me money. You're fired. Get out of my sight before I have security throw you out." Thomas looked at Henry, begging for help. Henry looked at the floor. Thomas dropped his head and walked away, his livelihood gone in 3 seconds. "Henry," Preston snapped, "I want a server who possesses basic motor functions. Now." Henry looked around wildly. Sarah was busy at another table. The other servers were hiding in the pantry. His eyes landed on Maya. She froze. She needed this job. She needed the tips. But walking out to that table felt like walking into a lion's den wearing a steak necklace. "Maya," Henry whispered frantically. "Take the steak. Don't speak. Just place it down and leave." Maya took a deep breath, picked up the hot plate, and walked out onto the floor. Maya approached table 1 with steady steps. She focused on her breathing. In for 4, out for 4. She placed the ribeye down in front of him with practiced precision, ensuring the plate was rotated, so the garnish faced 12 o'clock. "Your steak, sir," she said softly. Preston didn't look up. He cut a piece of the meat, inspected the pink center, and took a bite. He chewed slowly. Maya waited, holding the silver tray against her chest. She turned to leave, thinking she had survived. "Stop," Preston said. Maya halted. She turned back. "Yes, sir." Preston put his fork down. He finally looked at her. His eyes were piercing, assessing her value and finding it lacking within seconds. "This is garbage." "I beg your pardon?" Maya asked. "It's seasoned with truffle salt," Preston said, wiping his mouth with a napkin as if he had eaten poison. "I specifically told Henri 3 weeks ago that I was tired of the truffle trend. It's lazy cooking. Take it away." "I can have the chef prepare another one immediately. Sans truffle," Maya said professionally. "No," Preston waved his hand dismissively. "My appetite is gone. Bring me the bill, and tell Henry he's on his final strike." Maya looked at the steak. It was a $100 cut of Wagyu. It was perfectly cooked. The faint scent of truffle was delicate, not overpowering. It was a masterpiece of a meal, and he was discarding it like trash because of a whim. She thought of her empty refrigerator. She thought of her father, sitting in his recliner, apologizing that he couldn't afford his medication this week. She thought of the waste. Something in her snapped. It wasn't a loud snap, but a quiet clicking into place of her spine. "Sir," Maya said. She didn't move to take the plate. Preston's eyes narrowed. He looked at her as if a lamp had just spoken to him. "Excuse me." "The chef didn't use truffle salt," Maya said. Her voice was steady, though her heart was hammering against her ribs. "This is a Wagyu cut from the Kagoshima prefecture. The cattle are fed a specific diet that gives the fat a distinct, earthy umami profile that mimics truffle. If you send this back, the next one will taste exactly the same, because that is the flavor of the meat you ordered." The restaurant went silent. Henry, who was hovering near the bar, looked like he was about to have a stroke. No one corrected Preston Garrick. No one. Preston slowly turned his entire body to face her. The air tension was thick enough to choke on. "Are you?" Preston started, his voice dangerously soft. "Lecturing me on the food I am paying for?" "No, sir," Maya replied, holding his gaze. "I am ensuring you don't look foolish by sending back a perfect steak because you mistook the quality of the beef for a seasoning error." A collective gasp swept through the dining room. A couple at a nearby table stopped eating. Henry covered his face with his hands. Preston stared at her. For 10 long seconds he didn't blink. He looked at her cheap uniform, her pulled-back hair, her defiant chin. He was waiting for her to break, to apologize, to cry. She didn't. "What is your name?" he asked. "Maya." "Maya Linley." Preston picked up his fork again. He took another bite of the steak. He chewed, this time savoring the flavor, analyzing it against what she had said. He swallowed. "You're lucky you're right," he muttered, picking up his knife. "Now get me a sparkling water, and don't spill it." Maya gave a curt nod. "Right away." She walked back to the kitchen, her knees shaking only once she was out of sight. Henri grabbed her by the shoulders. "Are you insane?" he hissed. "You don't correct him, you just take the plate." "He was wrong, Henri," Maya said, pouring the water. "And I'm not going to throw away good food because he has an ego." "You're playing with fire," Henri warned. "He's not going to forget this. Preston Garrick never forgets a slight." The next week, Maya tried to swap shifts, but Henri refused. "He asked for you," Henri said, looking pale. Specifically, he said if the girl with the mouth isn't working table 1, he's buying the building and turning it into a parking lot. So Maya was back at table 1. This time, Preston wasn't alone. He was seated with 3 men in expensive grey suits. The table was covered in documents, not food. Maya recognized the tension immediately. It wasn't a social dinner, it was a hostile negotiation. "The Kensington acquisition is dead in the water, Preston," one of the men said. He was older, balding, with a face like a bulldog. This was Arthur Trenton, a rival developer. "You don't have the zoning permits for the harbour project. The city is blocking you. The city is negotiating," Preston corrected, sipping his scotch. He looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes that the dim lighting couldn't hide. "I'll get the permits." "You have until Friday," Trenton sneered. "If you don't have the permits by the board meeting, my firm buys the controlling stake in the harbour. You'll lose the contract, Preston. You'll lose millions." Maya approached the table to refill the water glasses. She tried to be invisible, but she couldn't help listening. She knew the Kensington deal. She had read about it in the Financial Times during her breaks. It was a massive urban renewal project. If Preston lost it, his company would take a massive hit. "We need more scotch," Preston barked without looking at her. "The Macallan 25. "We are out of the 25, sir," Maya said. Preston slammed his hand on the table. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "Then go to the cellar and find something equivalent. Why is every simple task a monumental failure in this place?" "Preston, calm down," Trenton laughed, enjoying the younger man's frustration. "Stress is bad for the heart. Maybe you're losing your touch. Maybe you're not the shark you used to be." Preston's jaw tightened. He looked ready to flip the table. He was cornered. He didn't have the permits, and his rivals smelled blood. He was taking it out on the staff because he was losing control of his empire. Maya looked at the papers spread on the table. They were zoning maps and city ordinances. Her eyes caught a specific highlighted paragraph on a document near Trenton's elbow. Ordinance 44B, Historic Preservation Clauses. Her mind flashed back to her second year of law school. Property law, Professor Holloway. They had spent 2 weeks dissecting the loopholes of New York's historic preservation acts. She looked at Preston. He was a bully. He was rude. He represented everything she hated about the ultra-rich. But Trenton? Trenton was known for evicting nursing homes to build condos. He was worse. And more importantly, Preston was underestimating her. They all were. They thought she was just a waitress who fetched scotch. "I will check the cellar," Maya said. She went to the back, but she didn't just look for whiskey. She pulled out her phone and quickly searched NYC Ordinance 44B subsection C. She read it twice to be sure. When she returned, she carried a bottle of Glenfiddich. She poured Trenton's glass, then Preston's. "Here is the whiskey," she said. She placed the bottle down. Then, instead of leaving, she looked at the map in the center of the table. "More water, girl?" Trenton asked dismissively, waving her away. "Actually," Maya said, her voice cutting through the male posturing, "Mr. Garrick, you don't need the zoning permits." The table went deadly silent. Trenton froze with his glass halfway to his mouth. Preston looked up, his eyes narrowing into slits. "What did you say?" Preston asked. "You're being blackmailed over zoning permits for the harbour project," Maya said, pointing a finger, a severe breach of etiquette, at the document. But that plot of land was designated a maritime heritage site in 1924. Under Ordinance 44B, subsection C, heritage sites are exempt from modern commercial zoning restrictions as long as the exterior facade remains 60% original. She looked directly at Trenton, whose face had gone from smug to pale. "You don't need the city council's permission," Maya continued. "You just need a heritage surveyor to sign off on the brickwork. It takes 48 hours, not 6 months. Mr. Trenton knows that. He's betting on you not knowing it, so you'll sell him the steak cheap." Preston looked at Maya. Then he looked at Trenton. He saw the panic in the older man's eyes. Preston slowly reached out and pulled the map closer. He scanned the document, then looked up at Trenton. A slow, terrifying smile spread across Preston's face. It was the smile of a wolf that had just realized the trap was actually open. "Get out," Preston said to Trenton. "Now, Preston, let's not be hasty. The girl doesn't know what she's—" "I said get out," Preston roared, standing up. "Take your offer and get out of my restaurant before I buy your company just to fire you." Trenton scrambled to gather his papers and fled the restaurant, his entourage trailing behind him. Preston was left standing alone at the table with Maya. The adrenaline was fading, and Maya suddenly realized what she had done. She had just intervened in a multi-million-dollar negotiation. She gripped her serving tray, her knuckles white. Preston sat back down. He exhaled a long breath. He looked at the empty chair where his rival had been. Then he looked up at Maya. The contempt was gone from his eyes, replaced by a burning curiosity. "Sit down," he commanded. "Sir, I can't. I'm on shift. Henry will—" "I don't care about Henri. Sit down." Maya hesitated, then pulled out the chair opposite him and sat. "Who are you?" Preston asked, leaning forward, because no waitress knows Ordinance 44B off the top of her head. "I was a law student," Maya said, lifting her chin. "Top of my class, before life happened." "Why are you carrying trays of beef instead of suing people? Tuition is expensive. Medicine is expensive. Not everyone starts with a trust fund, Mr. Garrick." Preston flinched slightly at the jab, but he didn't get angry. He poured a small amount of the Glenfiddich into a clean glass and slid it across the table to her. "Drink," he said. "That advice just saved me $50 million. The least I can do is buy you a drink." "I don't drink on the job." "You're not on the job anymore," Preston said. "You're fired." Maya's heart dropped into her stomach. "What?" "You're fired as a waitress," Preston corrected, pulling a gold fountain pen from his jacket pocket. He grabbed a napkin and scribbled a number and an address on it. "Report to this address tomorrow at 8 a.m., 40th floor. Don't be late." "What is this?" Maya asked, taking the napkin. "My legal team is incompetent. They missed what you caught in 5 seconds. Preston stood up, buttoning his jacket. "You're my new personal consultant. We'll discuss your salary tomorrow. I assume it will be significantly higher than your tips." He turned to leave, then paused. "And Maya?" "Yes." "Don't wear that uniform. It doesn't suit you. The headquarters of Garrick Enterprises was a 50-story monolith of glass and steel that pierced the Manhattan sky. At 7:55 a.m., Maya Linley stepped out of the elevator onto the 40th floor. She wasn't wearing her waitress uniform. She was wearing her only suit, a charcoal grey ensemble she had bought for moot court competitions 3 years ago. It was slightly tight in the shoulders, but she held her head high. The 40th floor was silent, much like the restaurant. But this silence was different. It was the silence of predatory focus. Analysts and lawyers moved like ghosts across the plush carpet. You must be the charity case. Maya turned. Leaning against a doorframe was a man in his 40s with slicked-back blonde hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. This was Spencer Reed, Garrick's general counsel. He had heard about the Waitress incident, and he was not pleased. "My name is Maya," she said, extending a hand. He didn't take it. "I know who you are. You're the girl who got lucky with a zoning law obscure enough to impress a desperate man," Spencer said, checking his watch. "Preston is a visionary, but he gets bored. He likes new toys. You're the flavor of the month. Don't get comfortable. My team consists of Harvard and Yale graduates. We don't need a paralegal dropout checking our work." "If your team is from Harvard and Yale," Maya replied coolly, dropping her hand, "then it's even more embarrassing that they missed Ordinance 44B, isn't it?" Spencer's smile vanished. "Watch your step, Maya. It's a long way down from here." "Spencer!" Preston's voice boomed from the double doors at the end of the hall. "Stop harassing the new talent and get in here." Maya walked past Spencer, feeling his glare burning into her back. She entered Preston's office. It was expansive, with a panoramic view of the city. Preston was standing by the window, looking down at the streets below like a god surveying his ants. "Sit," Preston said, not turning around. Maya sat. The desk was covered in files. "Spencer says you're a liability," Preston said, turning around. "He says hiring a waitress as a legal consultant is grounds for an insanity plea." "Spencer seems insecure," Maya noted. Preston smirked, a genuine small smirk. "He is. That's why he's useful. He's paranoid. But he's also right. You have no degree. You have no license. Technically, you can't practice law for me." "Then why am I here?" "You're here to be my conscience." Preston walked over and sat on the edge of his desk, looming over her. "My lawyers tell me what is legal. They find ways to bury things, but they lack instinct. You saw the Trenton deal and you saw the trap. You didn't just see the law, you saw the leverage." He slid a thick red folder across the desk. "This is the acquisition of Redfield Logistics, a trucking company in Ohio. We're buying them out to streamline our supply chain. Spencer says it's clean. Read it. Tell me what they're missing." Maya opened the file. She spent the next 6 hours in a small annex office, reading every line of the acquisition contract. It was dense, boring, and intentionally confusing. But as she dug into the employee pension appendices, she found it. She walked back into Preston's office at 4 p.m. Spencer was there, pouring himself a drink. "Well?" Preston asked. "Don't buy it," Maya said, tossing the file onto the desk. Spencer laughed. "Here we go. What did the waitress find? A typo?" "No," Maya said, ignoring him and locking eyes with Preston. "Redfield Logistics is underfunded in their pension liabilities by 40%. They've been cooking the books to look profitable for a sale. If you buy them, you inherit the debt. You'll be on the hook for $20 million in driver pensions the moment the ink dries." Spencer frowned. "That's impossible. We audited them." "You audited their tax returns," Maya countered. "You didn't cross-reference their union agreements with their actual payout schedules. Look at page 402, subsection D." Spencer grabbed the file, flipping pages frantically. His face went pale. Preston watched Spencer's reaction, and he knew. He looked at Maya, a strange light in his steel-grey eyes. It wasn't just respect. It was fascination. "You saved me $20 million, Preston said quietly. "I just read the fine print," Maya shrugged. "It's what I do." "Spencer," Preston said, his voice dropping to a terrifying chill. "Get out, and fix it. If Maya finds another mistake you missed, you're fired." Spencer grabbed the file and stormed out, slamming the door. Preston stood up and walked around the desk. He stopped inches from Maya. The air between them crackled. For the first time, Maya noticed that he smelled of sandalwood and expensive ink. "You're dangerous, Maya Linley," he whispered. "Is that a bad thing?" "In my world? No," Preston said. "It's the only thing that matters." 3 weeks passed. Maya was no longer the outsider. She was the gatekeeper. Nothing reached Preston's desk without her eyes on it first. She worked 18-hour days, fueled by espresso and the adrenaline of the high-stakes world. She sent money home to her mother, enough to keep the heat on and buy groceries. But the medical bills for her father were still mounting. Her father, David, had a rare degenerative lung condition. There was a treatment, a new drug called Respira X, but it cost $4,000 a dose, and insurance had denied it. Maya tried to push that worry aside as she worked late one Tuesday. It was raining, the water lashing against the glass of the 40th floor. The office was empty, except for her and Preston. "You're still here," Preston said, emerging from his office. He had loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves. He looked less like a titan of industry and more like a weary man. "Just finishing the report on the Tokyo merger," Maya said, rubbing her temples. "Come," Preston said. "Enough work." He led her to a private elevator she hadn't noticed before. It took them up to the roof. The rooftop was a garden, a stunning oasis of green high above the city. There was a glass-enclosed seating area with a fire pit. Preston poured 2 glasses of wine and sat down, motioning for her to join him. "Why do you work so hard, Maya?" he asked, looking at the fire. "Most people would have taken the salary I gave you and done the bare minimum. You fight for every contract like it's life or death." "Because for me, money isn't just points on a scoreboard," Maya said softly. "It's survival." Preston looked at her. The hardness in his face softened. "I grew up with everything, but I had nothing. My father was a shark. He taught me that trust is a weakness. He taught me that everyone wants something from you." "Do you think I want something from you?" Maya asked. Preston leaned in closer. His eyes searched hers. "I think you're the first person in 10 years who has told me the truth without expecting a payout. You challenged me in the restaurant. You challenge me here." He reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered on her jawline. Maya's breath hitched. She saw the loneliness in him, the isolation of a man who lived in a tower. "Maya," he said softly. His phone buzzed. The moment shattered. Preston pulled away, sighing. He checked the screen. "I have to take this. It's Tokyo. Wait here." He walked to the far edge of the roof garden. Maya let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. She was falling for him. The rude, arrogant billionaire had a heart, buried under layers of armor. She went back downstairs to grab her coat from his office while he was on the call. As she picked up her purse, her eyes landed on a stack of files on his desk, marked Confidential, Subsidiary Performance Review. The top file was labeled Farm Tech Solutions. Maya froze. Farm Tech was the manufacturer of Respira X, the drug her father needed. Curiosity won out. She opened the file. Her eyes scanned the executive summary, and her blood turned to ice. Subject: Respira X Pricing Strategy. Owner, Garrick Enterprises, via Farm Tech Acquisition. Decision, increase unit price by 600% to maximize Q4 yield. Suspend compassionate care programs for low-income patients. The drug is essential for life. Demand is inelastic. Patients will pay. Signed at the bottom, in bold, aggressive ink. Approved. Preston Garrick. Meyer stared at the signature. The room spun. Preston hadn't just bought a company. He had personally signed off on the price hike that was killing her father. He was the reason her dad was gasping for breath every night. He was the reason her mother was weeping over denial letters. Patients will pay. The words echoed in her mind. He wasn't a misunderstood, lonely man. He was exactly what she thought he was in the restaurant. A monster who viewed human life as a line item on a spreadsheet. She heard the elevator ding. Preston was coming back. Meyer quickly shoved the file back onto the stack. She grabbed her bag, her hands trembling with rage and grief. When Preston walked in, he was smiling. Sorry about that. Where were we? I have to go, Meyer said. Her voice was brittle. She couldn't look at him. If she looked at him, she might scream. Meyer, is everything okay? He reached for her arm. She flinched away from his touch, as if he burned her. Don't, I have a family emergency. I have to go. She ran for the elevator, leaving Preston standing in the middle of his office, confused and reaching for empty air. The next morning, Meyer didn't go to work. She went to the hospital. Her father had been admitted overnight. His oxygen levels had dropped. We need the Respira X, Ms. Linley, the doctor said gently. The generic isn't working. I know, Meyer said, holding her father's frail hand. I'll get it. I promise. She left the hospital with a cold resolve. She drove to Garrick Enterprises. She wasn't going there to work. She was going there to war. She needed to find the original patent agreement. If she could prove that the original development of the drug was publicly funded, which many drugs were, there was a clause that prevented excessive price gouging. It was a long shot, but it was all she had. She arrived at the office at 11:00 a.m. Preston was in meetings all day. Perfect. She sat at her desk, logging into the secure server. She had high-level clearance now. She navigated to the Farm Tech folder. She found the patent history. She needed to download it to a flash drive. Accessing some light reading? Meyer jumped. Spencer Reed was standing behind her chair. Spencer, she said, quickly minimizing the window. Just researching for the quarterly review. Really? Spencer leaned over, his cologne overpowering. He reached past her and tapped the keyboard, maximizing the window she had just hidden. Project, Respirex. Funny. That has nothing to do with the quarterly review. That's a legacy asset. I was just curious about the portfolio. Meyer lied, her heart hammering. Spencer stared at her. Then a slow, malicious smile spread across his face. You know, I did a background check on you, Meyer. Deeper than the HR one. I found out about your father. Sad story. Dying man, expensive drugs, and here you are, accessing the files of the company that makes those drugs. I'm not stealing anything, Meyer said, standing up. Aren't you? Spencer laughed. It doesn't matter if you are or not. It only matters what it looks like. He picked up the office phone and hit a speed dial button. Security? This is Reed. We have a data breach in the CEO's office. Lock down the elevators and tell Mr. Garrick to come here immediately. What are you doing? Meyer gasped. Getting my job back, Spencer hissed, and ensuring you never work in this town again. 2 minutes later, the doors burst open. Preston strode in, followed by 2 security guards. He looked from Spencer to Meyer. What is going on? Preston demanded. She's a spy, Preston, Spencer said, pointing at Meyer. I caught her downloading classified trade secrets onto an external drive. She's stealing the farm tech patent data, probably to sell to a generic manufacturer or blackmail us." Preston looked at Maya. "Is this true?" "I wasn't stealing it to sell it," Maya cried. "Preston, look at the file. Look at what you did. You raised the price of a life-saving drug by 600%. My father is dying because of your signature." Preston froze. He looked at the screen. He saw the file. Then he looked back at Maya. His face shut down. The vulnerability she had seen on the roof was gone, replaced by the mask of the billionaire CEO. "You used my access," Preston said, his voice ice-cold. "You used the trust I gave you to raid my private files for personal gain." "I'm trying to save my dad." "You're stealing company property," Preston said. "You manipulated me. You played the role of the honest waitress perfectly. I actually believed you were different." "I am honest," Maya stepped forward. "I'm the only one honest enough to tell you that you're killing people for profit. You stood on that roof and told me your father was a shark. Well, congratulations, Preston. You're worse than him." The room went silent. The security guards shifted uncomfortably. Preston's jaw tightened. He looked hurt, deeply, profoundly hurt, but his pride wouldn't let him show it. He felt betrayed by the one person he had let in. "Escort Ms. Linley out of the building," Preston said to the guards. He turned his back on her. "If she returns, arrest her." "Preston, please," Maya begged, as the guards grabbed her arms. "Read the file, just read it." "Spencer," Preston said without turning around, "wipe her access and ensure our legal team is ready if she tries to leak anything." "With pleasure, sir," Spencer smirked. Maya was dragged out of the office. She looked back one last time, seeing Preston standing by the window, alone, a silhouette against the grey sky. She had lost her job. She had failed her father. And the worst part was, she knew she had broken the heart of the man she hated. She was thrown out onto the sidewalk in the rain. She stood there, soaked and shivering, looking up at the 40th floor. "It's not over," she whispered to the glass tower. "You picked a fight with the wrong waitress." She reached into her pocket. Spencer had seen her plug in the flash drive, but in the chaos he hadn't checked her pocket. She hadn't managed to download the full patent. But she had grabbed one thing, the internal email thread where Spencer and the board explicitly discussed hiding the compassionate care clause from the public. It wasn't enough to save her dad yet, but it was enough to start a fire. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was a cavern of gold leaf and crystal, suffocatingly opulent. It was packed to capacity with the city's elite, hedge fund managers, tech moguls, and a predatory sea of journalists. The air conditioning was humming, but for Preston Garrick, the room felt like a kiln. He stood at the mahogany podium, the glare of 1,000 flashbulbs blinding him like lightning strikes in a storm. Behind him, a massive digital banner displayed the new logo, Garrick Enterprises and Farm Tech, breathing life into the future. The irony tasted like ash in his mouth. Preston gripped the edges of the podium so hard his knuckles turned white. He looked impeccable in a bespoke tuxedo, the kind that cost more than most people earned in a year. But inside, he felt like a hollow shell. He hadn't slept in 48 hours. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Maya's face in the rain, screaming that he was a monster. "Ladies and gentlemen," Preston began, his voice deep and commanding, amplified by the state-of-the-art sound system. "Today is not just a merger. It is a promise that Garrick Enterprises will lead the world in pharmaceutical innovation." He paused for applause. It came, polite and rhythmic, from the VIP section. But the press pit was restless. They smelled blood. Standing just to his left, slightly out of the spotlight, was Spencer Reed. The general counsel looked triumphant, practically vibrating with the thrill of victory. He leaned in slightly, his voice a low whisper that the microphone didn't catch. Stick to the script, Preston. Don't let them rattle you. We've already won. Preston ignored him. He looked out at the sea of faces. None of them cared about the medicine. They cared about the margins. They were calculating the yield on the quarterly dividends. Mr. Garrick, a reporter from the Chronicle, stood up in the second row, cutting through the scripted silence. The acquisition has triggered a massive spike in the market price of Respira X. We're hearing reports of a 600% markup overnight. Can you justify this to the patients who rely on this drug to breathe? Preston's stomach turned. Patients will pay. The phrase from the confidential file seared through his mind. He opened his mouth to speak, but Spencer stepped forward, smooth as oil. He placed a hand on the microphone, hijacking the moment. Market adjustments are a necessary reality of advanced R&D, Spencer said, his smile practiced and cold. We are committed to quality, and true quality, unfortunately, comes at a premium. Garrick Enterprises is ensuring that Respira X remains available for generations to come. We are saving the drug from bankruptcy. By bankrupting the sick, another reporter shouted. We are running a business, not a charity, Spencer snapped, losing his veneer for a split second before recovering. Next question. Preston watched Spencer. He saw the glint of greed in the man's eyes. He realized with a sickening jolt that this was who he had surrounded himself with for a decade. Men who viewed human suffering as an externality. Suddenly, a dull roar erupted from the back of the ballroom. It wasn't the polite murmur of late arrivals. It was the sound of a struggle. The heavy, gilded double doors swung open with a violent crash that echoed like a gunshot, silencing the room instantly. Heads turned. Cameras swiveled. Maya Linley stood in the doorway. She looked like a warrior who had walked through a hurricane. She wasn't wearing a cocktail dress or a business suit. She was wearing jeans and a soaked denim jacket, her hair plastered to her forehead from the unrelenting rain outside. She looked small against the grandeur of the ballroom, a speck of reality in a room full of illusions, but her eyes were burning with a fire that could consume the entire building. 2 security guards reached for her, grabbing her arms. "Get off me!" Maya shouted, her voice raw and desperate, carrying over the stunned silence of the crowd. She yanked her arm free with a strength born of pure adrenaline. "Security!" Spencer yelled into the microphone, his voice cracking with panic. "Remove that woman! She is a trespasser! She's a disgruntled ex-employee! I'm not trespassing, Spencer!" Maya screamed back. She stepped into the room, holding a flash drive high in the air like a weapon. "And I'm not disgruntled. I'm a witness." The room was paralyzed. This was the kind of drama the press lived for. A dozen cameras swung away from the billionaire on the stage and zoomed in on the soaking wet woman in the aisle. The security guards hesitated. They knew the optics of tackling a young woman on live television would be a PR suicide. Maya took that hesitation and used it. She began to walk down the center aisle. The crowd parted for her, drawing back as if she were radioactive. "What is she doing?" Preston whispered, his heart hammering against his ribs. "She's ruining everything," Spencer hissed, his face draining of color. "Cut the feed! Somebody cut the damn feed!" But the technicians didn't move. They were watching, captivated. Maya stopped 10 feet from the stage. She was close enough that Preston could see the dark circles under her eyes, the trembling of her hands, and the utter desperation etched into her features. She ignored the cameras. She looked straight at him. "I have the email, Preston," she said, her voice shaking, but loud enough for the microphone to pick up. "What email?" Preston asked, stepping out from behind the podium. "The one you didn't see," Maya said, holding up the small silver drive. The internal correspondence between Spencer Reed and the board of Farm Tech, dated 3 days before the acquisition. "She's lying!" Spencer shrieked, rushing to the edge of the stage. He pointed a trembling finger at her. "That drive is stolen property. It's full of fakes. She's trying to blackmail the company because she was fired for incompetence." Maya didn't flinch. She kept her eyes locked on Preston. Subject line: concealing the compassionate care clause from CEO Garrick. A collective gasp swept through the room. The reporters began typing furiously on their phones. "It's not a fake," Maya continued, tears finally spilling over her lashes, mixing with the rain on her face. "The original patent for Respira X was developed with a federal government grant in 2008. That grant holds a legal mandate. It states that 30% of the stock must be allocated to low-income patients for zero cost." She took a step closer to the stage. "Spencer knew that," she said, her voice breaking. "He buried the clause in the appendices. He hid it from the legal review. He sent you a summarized report so you would sign off on the price hike without knowing it was illegal. He framed you, Preston. He let you sign a death warrant for thousands of people, including my father." Preston felt the world stop. The noise of the cameras faded into a dull buzz. He looked at Maya. He remembered the first night they met, how she had refused to let him send back a perfect steak just to satisfy his ego. He remembered the zoning laws she had cited from memory to save him millions. He remembered the roof, where she had looked at him with genuine empathy. She had never lied to him. Not once. She had only ever tried to show him the truth he was too arrogant to see. Then he turned to Spencer. Spencer was sweating profusely now. His eyes were darting around the room, looking for an exit, looking for a lawyer, looking for anything but Preston's gaze. "Preston, listen to me," Spencer stammered, his voice dropping to a frantic whisper as he covered his lapel mic. "It was for the stock price. If we gave away 30% of the inventory for free, the valuation would drop. The shareholders would revolt. I did it for you. I did it to protect the company's future." "You did it," Preston said, his voice low and dangerous, vibrating with a lethal calm. "And you made me a murderer." "It's just business, Preston. It's just numbers." "No," Preston roared. The sound was so sudden and violent that Spencer recoiled physically. Preston reached out and ripped the microphone from the stand, the feedback screeching through the speakers. He turned back to the crowd. He looked at the investors, the sharks, the media. Then he looked at Maya. She was shivering, waiting for his judgment. "I am the CEO," Preston said into the handheld mic. His voice was steady now. "And ignorance is not a defense. I signed the order. The blame is mine." He took a deep breath, standing tall. For the first time in his life, he didn't care about the stock price. He didn't care about the board of directors. He only cared about the woman standing in the aisle with the wet hair and the brave heart. "Spencer Reed is fired. Effective immediately," Preston announced, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. "Security!" The guards, sensing the shift in power, straightened up. "Escort Mr. Reed out of the building," Preston commanded, pointing at his former right-hand man. "And call the NYPD. I believe corporate fraud on this scale, involving federal grant violations, is a felony." "You can't do this!" Spencer screamed, as the guards grabbed him by the arms. He kicked and thrashed, his dignity vanishing instantly. "I built this deal. You're nothing without me, Garrick. You're soft. You're weak." As Spencer was dragged away, screaming obscenities that were captured by every news network in the country, Preston stepped down from the stage. He didn't walk to the exit. He walked down the stairs, into the aisle, until he stood directly in front of Maya. Up close, he could see the exhaustion in her face. He could see the toll the last 2 days had taken on her. "Is it true?" Preston asked her, his voice shaking. "About your father." "He has 2 days left," Maya whispered, her strength finally failing her. Without the medicine, his lungs will just stop. Preston nodded. He turned back to the microphone one last time. He didn't look at the cameras. He looked at the floor, then up at the balcony, addressing the world. Effective immediately, the price of Respirex is set at $1 per dose, he declared. The room gasped. A few investors in the front row actually stood up in protest, shouting, "No!" Preston ignored them. And the Compassionate Care program is reinstated with full back pay for any patient who was denied coverage in the last month. We will ship emergency supplies to every hospital in the tri-state area by tonight. The room was in chaos. The stock ticker on the screen behind him was already plummeting, the red numbers falling like stones. But the reporters were cheering. Preston dropped the microphone. It hit the carpet with a thud. He stripped off his tuxedo jacket, feeling the weight of the billionaire CEO persona slide off his shoulders. He threw it on the floor. "Come on," he said to Maya, extending his hand. "Where?" she asked, looking at his hand as if it were a lifeline. "To the hospital," Preston said. "My driver is outside. We're going to get your father his medicine." Maya looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the change. The ice in his eyes had melted. She reached out and took his hand. The beep of the heart monitor was steady and rhythmic, the most beautiful sound in the world. David Linley was sleeping. His chest rose and fell with a deep, easy cadence. The IV drip, clear and constant, was delivering the medicine that had been denied to him just hours ago. Maya sat in the uncomfortable plastic chair beside the bed, her head resting near her father's hand. The adrenaline had crashed, leaving her exhausted, but her heart was lighter than it had been in months. The hospital room door opened softly. Preston walked in. He looked completely out of place in the fluorescent-lit room. Yet somehow, he fit perfectly. He had discarded the tie and unbuttoned his collar. He held 2 paper cups of terrible hospital coffee. "He's stable," Maya said, quietly, looking up. "The doctor said his oxygen saturation is back to 98%. He's going to make a full recovery." "Good," Preston said. He handed her a coffee and sat on the edge of the wide windowsill, looking out at the city lights. "That's good. You lost a lot of money today," Maya said, taking a sip of the bitter coffee. "I saw the news in the waiting room. Garrick Enterprises' stock is down 12%. The board is calling for your resignation." "Let them call," Preston shrugged. He looked relaxed, unburdened. "It'll bounce back, and if it doesn't, I don't care. I realized something today, Maya." "What?" "I was eating the finest food in the world, but I couldn't taste anything. I was building the biggest buildings in the skyline, but I felt small." He turned his gaze from the window to her. His eyes were intense, searching. "You were the first real thing that happened to me in 10 years. I was just a waitress who didn't want to serve a rude customer," Maya said, with a faint, tired smile. "And I was a customer who desperately needed to be served a lesson," Preston replied. "You saved me, Maya. You didn't just save your father. You saved me from becoming Spencer." He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was creased and worn. He unfolded it and handed it to her. It wasn't a legal document. It wasn't a check. It was a menu. The dinner menu from the Obsidian Club. "I bought the restaurant," Preston said casually. Maya laughed, a genuine startled sound. "Of course you did. Is that your solution to everything? Buying it?" "I fired Henry," Preston continued, ignoring her jab with a grin. "I rehired Thomas, the waiter I fired for spilling the wine. And I want to offer you a job." Maya shook her head. "I'm not waiting tables for you again, Preston. I have a law degree to finish." "I don't want a waitress," Preston said. He stood up and crossed the small room, kneeling beside her chair so he was at eye level. He took her free hand, his thumb brushing gently over her knuckles. "I need a partner." "A partner?" "I'm starting a foundation," Preston said, his voice soft, "to oversee the compassionate care program and ensure legal compliance for medical access. I need someone to run it. Someone who isn't afraid of the sharks. Someone who isn't afraid to tell me when my steak is fine, but my attitude is garbage." Maya looked at him. She saw the man who had driven her to the hospital in his limousine, speeding through red lights, shouting at traffic. She saw the man who had sat in the waiting room for 6 hours, refusing to leave until the doctors confirmed the drug was working. "I'm expensive," Maya warned, her eyes twinkling. "And I'm stubborn. I have billions," Preston smiled, the expression reaching his eyes and crinkling the corners. "I think I can afford you." He leaned in then, the space between them vanishing. He kissed her. It wasn't a polite, boardroom kiss. It was passionate and desperate, tasting of coffee and rain and second chances. "One condition," Maya whispered, when they finally broke apart, their foreheads resting against each other. "Anything," Preston promised. "Next time we go for dinner, you order the chicken." Preston threw his head back and laughed, a genuine hearty sound that filled the small hospital room and chased away the shadows. "Deal." From that day on, the staff at the Obsidian Club didn't tremble when Preston Garrick walked in, because usually he was walking in holding Maya's hand, and everyone knew that while he might be the boss of the city, the former waitress was the boss of his heart. And that is the story of how a single act of defiance changed 2 lives forever. Maya Linley proved that no amount of money can buy integrity, and Preston Garrick learned that the most valuable asset in the world isn't a stock portfolio, it's the truth. It just goes to show that you should never look down on someone serving you, because you never know when they might be the only one who can save you. What do you think? Was Preston's redemption genuine, or did he just get caught? And would you have forgiven him if you were Maya? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of karma, romance, and justice, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.